good to have you back.
Yeah, just traveling around the world.
Yeah, you've been everywhere.
I've been just everywhere you could possibly think.
Oh man, these online interviews.
Everywhere except the podcast.
Yeah. These online interviews are good, but like having to do it by myself is not exactly the best. But it is what it is. Especially, and we'll talk about it a little bit later in this episode. But it kind of is what it is with the way our situation is at the moment when it comes to recording. But big things took place, especially in the world of Stephon Morris. We just had the World Cup.
Oh yeah.
Do you call it soccer or football? Because I believe you're pretty cultured when it comes to this game.
I call it soccer. I say
you?
soccer. Yeah. Well, unless I'm in Europe, and then I immediately switch.
You switch.
I'm on to the other side.
Yeah, you've got a team, right? Who's your team? An actual European team that you follow?
Yeah. I follow Tottenham, and I'll be there in April. So.
I know like two teams. Well, actually, I'm kidding. I know a few more because I live in Australia. But prior to that, I knew like Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Argentina and France.
I know Argentina and France. So, real talk.
Yeah.
Is Messi the GOAT?
He's always been the GOAT.
He's always been.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this didn't really change anything for you.
No.
You were already sold.
It was. I'm glad to know that I'm right. No, just kidding.
Now, for you, was the conversation between Messi and Ronaldo, or was the conversation between Messi and?
It was between Messi and himself. Not. Yeah, probably. I would say Messi and Ronaldo.
Yeah. So, as someone who knows nothing about this, why is Ronaldo in there? Because he scores so many goals and has been very successful.
It's not like it's a. In all seriousness, it's probably not a clear-cut GOAT, right?
Mm-hmm.
But after this World Cup, it was clear to be like, okay, Messi brought his country to the championship. So, but I think Ronaldo, he's done it in different leagues. He's gotten so much awards and he's won so many Champions League finals. So it's like, how can you not have him in a discussion?
Yeah, and like Champions League, that's like the champions of each league in Europe.
Yeah, so there's normally a champion for each continent, and they have like their own leagues. But the biggest Champions League, I guess, is the one that's held in Europe, where you can have a team like Real Madrid face off a team, in
like Paris or from the UK.
Yeah, or even teams from Austria. Right?
Oh right,
That's not considered one of the best. So it's a fun competition where you can see the best play.
And so I guess that's where the argument comes
teams.
in, because if his team has won that, maybe do people view that as harder to win than the World Cup? Or
it's very debatable. I think it's probably depending on who your favorite team is and because how many trophies they won. I truly believe the league in Europe, not Europe, sorry, the league in England, the Premier League, is probably the hardest one
to actually win.
Yeah, because it's over a course of a season and there's no playoffs, so it's just it just racks up who has number one. So I think personally that's mine.
And neither one of those guys have played there. Oh no, he has.
Yeah,
Ronaldo played
has,
there.
and that's why
Messi
hasn't. So it's also kind of like, how do you?
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh?
Yeah, and the thing with Champions League, you can get sort of lucky with 2 games, right? But over a course of a season, who has the most points?
Yeah.
So,
well, guys, this still is the Hacker Podcast. We are going to talk about spiritual things, I guess, maybe. But this is a bit more relaxed, and I apologize that you had to sit through 7 minutes of that, but hopefully you became more informed, because I became more informed by that conversation about who the greatest of all time is in the World Cup. And, because we live in Sydney, the World Cup is huge.
It's huge.
Because it's such a multicultural city. And so you got people who are cheering for it, like not just their favorite player, but, South Americans are all pulling for Argentina. Unless you're Brazil, then you're not cheering for them.
And Australia also was in it too. They did really well.
Yeah, so. Australia and the U.S. both made it to the knockouts. So that's like our World Cup championship. So if we make the knockouts, then we're very proud of that.
Yeah, we won too.
Yeah, yep. Argentina, then the U.S. Well, let's get into this year in review. This is going to be a shorter episode. We're just going to go through some of the highlights from the year and talk about, some of the top cities, top countries, top downloads of the podcast, sort of celebrated. So some of the highlights from the year, we were able to get a podcast out every week. It was touch and go a couple weeks where we're like, should we get one out? Do we have time to get one out? But we were able to get one out every week, so pretty proud of that because it is quite challenging getting one of these out every single week. So we did that every week. That required me to record while I was traveling in Bali and Kansas City. That one was, remember the camera in Kansas City was like yellow? I was like, what's up with this? And it was the camera settings because Stefan wasn't there to save me.
No, I think that's just like how Kansas City looks. That's what
it's got a yellow hue across the entire
whole
city.
thing. It's just,
dude, we have fresh air out there.
is that what you call it? Just kidding.
Yeah, it's just the corn that's burning off, and it's just no. But I recorded there, recorded even one in Dubai. So pretty amazing getting this done every week. We welcomed you to the podcast this year. It started and joined as a co-host to the podcast, and then we started videoing, right around the same time. So we started videoing every episode. I think you joined maybe like 1 or 2 episodes after we actually started videoing them all, but we've been doing that since episode 60. So those are some of the really cool highlights that we had for the year, for the podcast,
and especially how we've been listening over 69 countries exactly, right? And those top countries are Denmark, surprisingly, Singapore, Canada, Australia, and United States, our home.
Oh, the U.S. clipped Australia.
I know.
Back in the day, it was like this podcast was pretty much Australia,
right?
And then we had some of the other countries. So I think we had like 70% in Australia, and just recently, the U.S. clipped Australia for the most amount of downloads. But, Australia, you can always come back. We're a fighting nation,
I don't know.
Yeah, you're fighting a big population.
Yeah. I think, we'll see.
A special shout out to some of the countries in Europe that we've seen. We've had a number of listeners in Latvia, Belgium. Belgium was pretty cool. Norway, Germany, and the Netherlands. So it's really great to see you all supporting the podcast. And then recently, we've had a bunch of countries start listening in Africa. So we had Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa have caught onto the podcast just in the last few weeks. So that's been really cool to see. For I don't know, maybe 18 months, and there was like no downloads in Africa at all. It's like somehow it's got a lot of the countries there speak English. So it's great to see us get in there, and some of those countries are listening to the Hacker podcast. It's wild to me to think that people are downloading this in Kenya and throughout Africa. But all right, so that's the top 5 countries.
Yeah.
Now let's look. We changed actual hosting platforms halfway through the year, and this new platform allows us to see actual cities, not just countries. So before it was we could only see countries, but now we can actually see the cities where it's most being downloaded.
How cool is that, by the way?
It's pretty amazing when you look at the map and just seeing it all over the world. And so honorable mention, they didn't quite make top 5, but I thought it was amazing to see how many downloads we've had in Brussels, Belgium. Quite a number of downloads there. Which
I've been there.
Have you?
Yeah, it's really nice.
Maybe it's because they know you.
Yeah. I'm popular out there, I guess.
It's very, very possible. But coming in number
6 years ago.
Long memories.
Coming in for a day.
Coming in at number 5, we had Singapore. So Singapore is a country and a city all in one. So Singapore comes in at number 5. Number 4, Ashburn, Virginia, is the 4th most listened to city. And then we've got Melbourne, Victoria. Quebec City, Quebec comes in at number 2. And the most listened to city is, of course, Sydney, Australia. Hometown represent.
Greg, I don't see Kansas City here. It's just I see Brussels as an honorable mention, but I don't see Kansas City.
Yeah,
here.
We do have a number of listeners there. I came with with support for this. They split it up into the towns. So if we bunched all of the downloads in Kansas City
it'd definitely
together,
be number 1.
Not number 1, not even close, but it might crack the top 5. So they break it up into in Independence and Liberty and all these little suburbs of Kansas City. So I think the platform only registers it as Kansas City if you're actually in Kansas City city limits. So
All right. So what about the top 5 episodes, Greg?
Top 5 episodes. Okay, so you guys will notice a trend here that they're all recent episodes, and that's just because we've just had such an influx of growth over the last few months. So coming in at number 5 is episode 86 with Vicky Gonzalez. Number 4 is episode 84 with Adrian Hall. Coming in number 3, is episode 82 with Tavita Uade. And then 1, 2 is Dr. Vonnie Marshall. So second most listened to is the first episode we did with her, which was episode 75. And then far and away, the most popular episode on video, on audio, is the one we did on mental health with Dr. Vonnie Marshall. It's the one that most people would know the podcast by. So that was number 1, far and away, the top downloaded episode of 2022 for the podcast.
What I noticed throughout the entire year as we gradually got to this point was, the increase in audio downloads, right?
Yeah, it's actually amazing. At the start of the year, and I was happy with it. At that time, it was halfway through the year, it moved to we. But I was stoked with we were averaging around 1,200 downloads a month, audio downloads. And for me, I mean, that was really cool. Like, for me, anyone listening ever to the podcast is just cool. Like, why? Why do you listen? But, we had we were averaging around 1,200 audio downloads a month at the beginning of the year. And closing out the year, this past 30 days, we've been averaging 1,500 audio downloads a week.
That's insane.
So the growth is like 4x or more. It's just really exploded, and it's been amazing to see, where the podcast has shown up all around the world. So, so grateful, so thankful for all of you who do listen and share the podcast.
Right, and YouTube has also been growing as well, and we just want to thank everyone who subscribed. We're currently 57 or 58 subscribers away from that 1,000 mark.
We're so close. We're so close to 1,000. So remember all the way back at the 1 year episode, and we're like, our goal was 100. And you created 17 accounts to get us to 100.
I still have them. I will create the next 57. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so pretty awesome. Like, that was June or something. We had just hit 100. So we're about to hit 1,000, and that's amazing to see that growth in the year. Talking about the different episodes, so in 2022, we got to stick to just 2022. What would you say was your favorite episode for this year?
Yeah, so my favorite episode was episode 74.
Who was that with?
That was with Sam.
Oh yeah, Sam
Rainema. Yeah, it was talking about discipleship. It's a lot. It's nice to. I mean, I was also like listen to it firsthand.
You're there for it.
But it was also nice because he talked about discipleship, and I learned so much. And it was just a great conversation, I think.
Yeah, he's so knowledgeable about that subject.
He really is. Yeah,
he really is. And like, what it didn't surprise me, but like the way he talked about it was a bit more cerebral,
right?
Which was really cool, all encompassing.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that one. My favorite one.
I was gonna say I have to flip the script, and it's gonna be hard for you. I mean,
Yeah. It's like
you don't want to ruffle any feathers here. You
exactly.
Have to choose
and people are gonna be coming back on, hopefully.
It's a good thing we didn't do the one with our mother-in-law yet, because then
we both had to pick that one. And the first one I did with her was last year. So I guess if we're trying not to ruffle feathers, it would be the one that I did with Steph. No, that was a good one. But I would say if I had to pick one, I already picked the one with Harold Hoffman when we celebrated 1 year, so I'm not going to pick that one again. The most impactful one, and the one that actually really changed my sort of view on things, was definitely Dr. Vonnie Marshall. Both episodes with her really like impacted the way I thought about myself, the way I live.
100%.
Those ones were great. I feel like everyone will say that one, or almost everyone will say that. So I'm going to be a bit contrarian, and I would say probably the one we just put out with Adam Hunley.
Okay.
So the one before that was also really, really good with Tim Zuniga. Just the way he talked about leadership was really cool. But the most recent one with Adam Hunley is probably my favorite. Just so much respect for that man, and listening to his advice and just really was impactful to me. So yeah,
Yeah.
that would probably be the favorite if I had to pick one.
Right. That's a good one.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? So this was 2022.
Yeah.
And we're moving on into 2023.
Yeah.
I just wanted to announce in this episode, the next 2 episodes that you will hear from us at the beginning of the year. We're starting 2023 with a bang. We've been promising it for a few months. We've got Dr. Vonnie Marshall back on the podcast, and she's going to be talking to us about boundaries. And there's a part 1 and a part 2. So the first 2 episodes of 2023 will be with Dr. Vonnie Marshall. So really stoked about that. And then we're coming up on 100 episodes. We're right around the corner from 100. And it's really cool that we're almost there. So that'll be coming up right at the beginning of the year as well.
Yeah. And the cool thing about it is we're going to be continuing to push out weekly content.
Fingers crossed.
that same sort of drive that we had. It's kind of our goal, you know. It's that consistency and sticking with it is going to be our goal, and you can expect that from us. But also exciting news around April, you know, we won't be homeless anymore. We might actually have a permanent studio, at least long-term studio. Yeah.
Well, if you guys remember, I think in the 1 year episode we talked about us trying to convince Steph to let us have a studio in the garage. Well, she has relented, and not only are we going to be able to have a bit of a permanent type studio, but it will be indoors.
Ooh.
It will be air conditioned controlled. So
nice.
When the house is finished, we will finally have something somewhat permanent. So that'll be exciting, because it has been a bit difficult with these random setups. You know, we're here in the POS sanctuary recording this one, and we've recorded in all types of places. But yeah, that'll be awesome. And we want to upgrade the setup a little bit. You guys hear the noises every once in a while, and that's because we got these things on stands. So maybe we'll get one of those arms and get rid of the drum rolls on the table, specifically from me. When my Italian comes out, even when I'm not Italian, but my hands just go crazy.
and who knows, you know, we might even possibly come out with merchandise if you want. Hack a Podcast shirts, or you know,
coffee mugs maybe.
The traditional ones. Maybe we think of something new, like something fun.
Facial tattoos.
Yeah, I don't
thought about that.
Yeah, maybe like facial tattoos. Let's see, like Hack a Podcast branded coffee.
Oh wow, that's a lot of work.
I don't know where that came from. I don't even drink coffee.
We could collab with somebody, I guess. Somebody knows something about coffee. No, but yeah, if there's a market for it, we might put some out, and if you guys are interested, that would be cool. No, that's some of the things to look forward to next year. We're excited about the podcast and the future of it. We started off this podcast, because we love it. We love doing it. And yeah, we've invested some money into it to get the mics and the setup and some subscriptions to help with the editing and all of that. And we have had a few people reach out and ask us how they can support the podcast, because they have enjoyed it. And so when I'm not just making that up, that actually did happen. So someone did reach out, and if you know me, this is embarrassing for me to even mention, but this will be the one time we ever mention it. We do have a support link on our link tree, and you can access that on Instagram, Facebook. And if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do that by navigating there. But that's the last time we mention it. Okay, so if you want to support, you can there. This has been an amazing year for the podcast, and we're going to finish it off on a bit of a more serious. I know we've had some fun, but to finish off on a more serious note, I just want to encourage someone out there to take a step of faith this coming year. You know, if God is asking you to do it, if you have a dream, if there's something that you're wanting to do, I want to encourage you to take that step of faith in 2023. Try and accomplish that goal, or at least work towards that goal in this year coming forward. I was inspired. We mentioned it just recently about the conversation that we had with our brother Adam Hunley. And he finished that off by saying, we need to embrace the stretching. We need to embrace what stretches us. We need to learn to love the deep end of the pool. And so I want to encourage you to embrace the challenge, embrace the stretching, try and do more for the kingdom, fulfill the dream that God has given you. You know, I remember back in July, we were finishing up the first episode that we had with Dr. Vonnie Marshall. And I remember, like, right at the end of it, you know, I thanked her for coming on the podcast, and she's like, you know, that it's great to be on, and I pray that this podcast would reach millions and be a blessing to them. And when she said that, you know, I kind of thought to myself, yeah, right. I got that millions. Okay, that's a bit eager. Yeah, I think at that time we had, I don't know, 300 or 400 followers on Instagram. You know, we were averaging. It was good. Like, I was super excited with what was happening with the podcast. Like I said, I'm grateful that anyone would listen to it. But you know, when you're throwing millions out there when we're in the thousands, I was like, that's a bit much, you know. And but I just remember her saying that, and I was thinking back on that this week, and when we were putting this together, that it's actually amazing. As of this date, December 23rd, 23, this podcast, through the content that we've produced, whether it's audio downloads, whether it's YouTube videos, social media clips, or whatnot, had over 1 million interactions. We've reached well over 1 million people. I don't know how many people we've reached. You know, it's hard to keep track, especially when it comes to social media. But, you know, it actually has impacted millions, which just, well, million. I don't know about the multiples, but it's just amazing that, you know, a little podcast that we started in Sydney, Australia would be able to reach it to that many people. And, you know, each week we're able to minister to thousands of people through the conversations that we have with wonderful men and women of God who have been so good to us. And, you know, we're humbled by all of this. We just can't believe where it's at, and it's pretty amazing. But none of that growth would have taken place if we hadn't stretched ourselves. You know, like we were talking about, we've been homeless. The podcast has been homeless, yet we still took that step of faith to do video content. And video content is hard. If you've ever done video content, you understand how difficult it is. And then if you don't have a studio, it's even harder. We're setting up cameras, we're setting up mics. It's almost like, you know, when you don't have a church building and you have to set up every time. That's kind of what it is every time we record video. And then you get the editing. So it's hours and hours of extra work. But if we didn't have that video, we wouldn't have had the growth, because of the interactions on social media and YouTube and so on and so forth. And so because we took that step of faith, we stretched ourselves, we put in that extra effort, it has resulted in the growth of the podcast, and we've been able to minister to people all for the glory of God. But it took a stretching, it took an embracing of the challenge. And that's what I just want to bring home to us at the end of this. You know, I want to finish up the year by encouraging you all to take that step of faith, to embrace the challenges, embrace the stretching, make it your goal to embrace that and see what God will do through your life this coming year.